Kingdom. And it was donated to Melbourne, which back then was called Batmania, by 6 London parishes, and some of their emblems are on the bridge there. So the River Yarra is actually called the Biberung, and it got the name Yarra from Yarra Yarra. So when Batman and his crew got here in 1835, they met the Wurundjeri people, who are from the Kulin Nation, the actual custodians of this land here, and they pointed to the river and they said, "What's this called?" But the Wurundjeri, they thought they were being asked to describe it. So they said Yarra Yarra, which means flowing water. So then that became Yarra, and we have the Yarra River, but the real name is the Biberung. So the Biberung means the river of mist and shadows, because it was very narrow back in the days, and it was very prone to flooding and bursting its banks. So on the south side, as we get much further down, I'll point out to you a lot of what used to be old marshlands and wetlands. So we're coming under Prince's Bridge now, and up ahead of us on the right hand side we have Flinders Street Station, the main train station of Melbourne, and one of the longest in Australia. Just ahead of it we've got this beautiful brand new floating bar. This is actually the 4th version of this bar, because each year it gets dismantled, rebuilt and built into a new theme. So last year it was all Mexican, and this year it's Italian. So it's in the Capri theme. Over on our left hand side we have the Arts Precinct. So Batman came up from Tasmania on this tiny little wooden boat with loads of sheep raisers, and they actually found this area and they're like, this is a good place to have a village. Now it wasn't sanctioned by the Crown, so the Crown got really angry and they said, you can't do that, Batman. And they sent a man named Robert Hoddle. He was a surveyor. He came up and he actually then planned the city of Melbourne into what it is, and he set various precincts around the city. So we have the Arts Precinct over there, and then we also have the Gardens Precinct a bit further up. On the left is the whole Southgate, South Bank area. Now this is relatively new. It was redeveloped in the 90s by a man named Evan Walker. So Evan Walker, not the photographer, he was actually a professor of architecture at the Melbourne University, and then he became a city planner and a politician, and he was able to push through a lot of his designs, and so he developed all of this precinct here, the South Bank Precinct. And funnily enough, this bridge got named after him, the Evan Walker Bridge. So we'll be able to see just on the side up there, Evan Walker, and we've got a lovely bar restaurant here called Ponyfish Island. So we're going to come up to the Sandridge Railway line, and this used to be the original line that actually connected the old Docklands up into Flinders Street Station. It has been pedestrianised now, and there are several giant sculptures up there. And they depict moments of mass migration into Australia. So obviously from the very first Indigenous Australians, right the way through the World Wars, the Gold Rush, and even some more recently from various conflicts and people seeking refuge in Australia. On our left is the Yarra Botanica, a much classier version of the Arbury afloat, and this is here all year round, and I believe every now and then they get a Michelin star chef on board to design the menu. So we're coming up to the first of the low bridges. Mic down. So this is the first of the low bridges, and I'm just going to get people to sit down at the back.
Is anyone out there? Or?
Is anyone out there? No? Hello? Oh, that's all good. No worries. Okay, cool. So this is Queen Street Bridge, and at this site was an old waterfall. And when the settlers, John Batman got this far up the Yarra and he found fresh water. He was the third explorer to come to Melbourne, and he was the third time lucky to actually succeed in making a settlement here. The other two, a man named Charles Grimes came in 1801 or 1802. He didn't get this far and he never found any fresh water. So he went back to New South Wales, wrote a scathing report: don't come to this part of Victoria, there's no fresh water. Batman found it, and here we have Enterprise Park, because this is where his vessel, the Enterprise, landed, only up to as far as the waterfall where he found fresh water. This is our sister boat. Everyone give them a wave. Love it. So this giant area was being used as a swing basin as the ships kept getting taller and bigger, and they widened the river and they got rid of the rock waterfall. And what entailed after that was the tidal waters would come in and push lots of salt water further up the Yarra, and so now we have this brackish water that we're floating on right now. On our left hand side is the Crown Casino complex. Built in the 90s at a cool $2.2 billion. It's where I like to go on Thursdays after payday. Sometimes I make it, sometimes I don't. Put it all on red, that's what my dad told me. So there are these 9 pillars up along here, and what they do with my money, they turn it into gas, and at sundown they put it in a big fire show. So I do recommend about 7 o'clock this evening, if you're wandering around here, come and hang around along this area and you'll see the fire show. So we're coming under the second lowest bridge that we're going to pass under. And this bridge was built in the 60s, named Kings Street Bridge. And obviously this bridge was here before the Crown Casino complex, so they had to build the casino over the bridge and underneath it, so as you can see there. And just on our right we have the Sea Life Aquarium, so you can go swimming with the sharks and you can look at the penguins if you like. So as we come out of King Street Bridge, on our right hand side is Batman Park. So I kid you not, his name was John Batman, he was a Tasmanian, and he named this place Batmania. This was the original name. Now, I don't know about you, I'm not a big fan of referendums, but if there was one, and it was like, should we call it Batmania, I'd definitely be voting for that. Instead, it was named Melbourne after a viscount of a tiny little village called Derby in the UK, and there was a politician that lived there, William Lamb, who was the Duke of Melbourne. And so Melbourne was named after that when Australia became federalised. So we're going to come under our lowest bridge now, which is the Spence Street Bridge. And this one is fairly special. It's got lots of trams, but the reason these bridges are so low is to accommodate for the horse-drawn carts as Melbourne was experiencing the gold rush boom as well. So, because this boat is quite tall, we do have to time the tides right. Luckily the tide's coming down now. Otherwise, if we miscalculate the tides, then you guys are going to get off over there, or we turn it into a convertible. Don't think the hospital will be about that. On our left-hand side, we've got the Melbourne Exhibition and Convention Centre, nicknamed Jeff's Shed, because the Premier of Victoria at the time, a bloke called Jeff, decided to commission this. And it is actually one of the biggest open floor spaces in the Southern Hemisphere. Various other parts of it, there's lots of art exhibitions that go on there. The Loon is there, there's a Van Gogh exhibition as well. So I do recommend it. On our right hand side is the beginning of the Victoria Dock. Now this is one of the longest docks in the world still to today. And as the vessels in the 1800s and 1900s were getting bigger and deeper, they could no longer be berthed up at Enterprise Park. So this area was widened, and for about 70 years this was used as the main docklands. So all of these dry docks here on the left, they are the original ones, And we can see 3 masts over there, just behind that restaurant, Boat Builders Yard. That's the Pollywood side. So she was built in Northern Ireland in the early 1900s, and she's a still hull schooner vessel and would trade between Argentina and New Zealand. And then she caught on fire, and the Kiwis were going to scuttle her. But the city of Melbourne were like, no, we'll buy her for a penny. So they bought her for a penny, towed her all the way back to Melbourne, put her in the dry dock up here, and then it's about 40,000 volunteer hours and a couple of $1 million later, she was restored. But by the time that happened, these new bridges were built, so she couldn't come out again. And instead now she's a maritime piece, part of the Maritime Museum. So as we come under Seafarers Bridge, just take a look over your left shoulder, and you'll be able to get a nice view of the Pollywood side. So this bridge is named the Seafarers Bridge. It's because on your right hand side you will see the old Seafarers Mission. And so this was built in the early 1900s, and it would be where all the weary merchant navymen would come. And there'd be chaplain services then there, accommodation and boarding, while their cargo vessels were being resupplied or dropping off cargo. And this is where the cargo would go, in these sheds here. So these are the original wharf sheds. They are heritage listed, and they're all now bars and restaurants. One of my particular favourite ones is this one, the Munich Brauhaus. So if you're into your German beer and food, and people in lederhosens dancing around, that's the one you go to. Just behind it is the direct factory outlet, the DFO. So you can buy all your sportswear there for factory prices. It's pretty good. Probably the better one in Melbourne out of the other two in the city. On the right hand side, above that construction site, is the Seafarers residence apartments. So they're what's known as a 6-star serviced hotel apartment. So you basically buy an apartment and it's treated like a hotel. You get a 24-hour concierge. You don't need to call Uber Eats because they can just bring it up for you instead. So we're coming up to Charles Grimes's bridge, which is the orange one here, and that connects Wurundjeri Way, which then heads down through to South Melbourne. And then on the right, this black footbridge is the Jim Stynes Bridge. So he was a Gaelic footballer from Ireland. He came over to play for Melbourne Demons, ended up coaching them and then managing them. And unfortunately he died of an inoperable brain tumour. So he was able to raise a lot of awareness and funds for cancer research, and in memoriam we have the Jim Stynes Bridge now. Now our second last one that we're going to come under is this called the Wet Bridge. So on the left hand side we've got this beautiful structure in a web shape, and that's inspired by an indigenous Australian eel trap. So the Wurundjeri people who lived off of this river would make these eel traps out of giant reeds, and it'd be very wide at one end and become quite conical and narrow at the other end, and used to collect eels and fish. So all of this area here is the Yarra's Edge Marina. This is all relatively new, however this was pretty much all marshland and wetlands back in the day. So not particularly solid ground, and the river was actually widened here. So where these lovely boats are, that's where the bank used to be. So all of this area was excavated and dredged, and a lot of that soil and silt was used to compact the land that these towers are on now. So we're still going alongside Victoria Dock here, and we're going to go into the docklands where most of the freight and the port operations would happen, until the vessels still got even bigger and bigger and the port was moved further downstream, we can see ahead of us. So in the 90s it was decided this whole area needs to be regenerated, and there was a 25-year project that began in the 2000s, so they're coming near to the end of it, and on our left hand side are the most recent finished parts of the regeneration. If you look at these buildings, they're all similar in shape, quite wing-like, and they're all on the same plane facing to our southwest. And that's because our prevailing winds are from the southwest as well. They come over the bay, and if you had giant square buildings, you'd get these horrible wind tunnels. So they're wing-shaped like this to help deflect the wind around the buildings and not damage people's balconies. So you can actually buy an apartment here. I think they start at about $1.5 million, but you do get used to the marina for another $30,000 a year. As you can see, it is well used, so they're doing something right. And so, as I said, the regeneration plans were approved in the 90s and began in the noughties, and all of this area was still pretty much old industrial wastelands because the port had moved further downstream. If we can see those giant, any Star Wars fans here, you know, the AT&T machines, they're down there. Those are giant cranes, and I'm a big fan of cranes. They're all automated, so they were all built and designed in Australia, and there's 6 major docks, and the ones we can see is part of Swanston docks, and they can turn a cargo vessel around in 24 hours. That means unload all of the containers, new ones on it, because they're automated. So there'll be one person controlling 6 of them at a time. And just here on the right, we've got the dock library. I actually just went in there and became a member the other day. And then in there, they've got a workspace for people to use, their 3D printers, they've got an electronics table, they've got recording studios, all free for Melbourne residents. And just behind it, we've got these 2 tall towers. So we're going to have a look at them again as we get towards Vic Harbour, and we're going to see if they're actually standing straight or not. And just on the right of them, we can just see the top of the Ferris wheel up there, the Melbourne Star. So that's Melbourne's biggest white elephant. Finished in about 2006 or 2008, and it was pretty much the only thing there in the Docklands. And you know, it doesn't really sell it if you jump on that, and all you can see around you is 180 degrees of port and 180 degrees of old industrial wasteland. So yeah, it wasn't much of a money maker, and then it broke down. In 2009, Melbourne had a really hot summer, really hot winds came, and an engineer climbed up to the top to install some LED lights and noticed there was some cracks in the superstructure. So he climbed down, reported it, and then the thing got inspected, and they realised, oh yeah, no, it's not in good condition, and it was brand new. So the builders had an argument with the architects had an argument with the builders, and they decided it was because of the heat stress and the winds that actually brought those cracks into the superstructure. So that had to get repaired, and then when it finally opened up again, it started spinning by itself. So that had to get repaired, and then it wouldn't start spinning. And then finally they got it working, and by that point, a lot of this construction that we can see, these new builds, were being shot up, so there was something to look at, but then COVID happened. And no one was allowed to go on there, and unfortunately they ran out of money. So it isn't in operation. There are talks about moving or building a similar one in the city centre, where Batman Park is, maybe near Enterprise Park. I'd like to see that happen, which it may do. So we're coming up to the end of Victoria Dock now, and on our left we have the most recent addition to this whole regeneration. These are Melbourne's newest townhouses. They sit on Lorimer Street. So you can get a 3-bedroom one for $3.5 million. I think there's one for sale at the end. I had a cheeky look, but didn't leave my details. Unless any of you guys went big, let me know. And up ahead of us, this will be one of the last things I point out, is the Bolte Bridge. So, named after Sir Henry Bolte, who was Victoria's longest serving premier between the 1950s to the 1970s. He had a tenure of about 20 years, and he oversaw Australia's last state execution of a prisoner. a man named Mr. Ryan who escaped from Pentridge prison up in Coburg, and on his way out he killed the prison guards and a member of the public, and so he was sentenced to hanging. And on the day of the execution, a journalist asked Henry Bolte, "So what are you going to be doing today on this day of Australia's last execution?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to do the 3 S's. A shower, shave, and you guys might be able to guess the last one. Shampoo." Yeah, thanks. But what's special about this bridge is not the man that oversaw the collapse of the Westgate Freeway Bridge, ironic to name a bridge after him, but it's these giant pillars that stand next to it, side to side. So, yeah, the Westgate, you can just see the flag in the distance flying. It's just coming up behind those trees. So that collapsed on his last year, and it was Australia's most tragic and largest industrial accident. I believe 36 to 37 people perished. But anyway, yeah. So these pillars, they are 10 metres taller than the Sydney Harbour Bridge, which keeps that old Melbourne-Sydney rivalry going. And they don't offer any structural support. So as we pass underneath them, look to your right, you'll see that they're not attached to the bridge in any way, they just offer it emotional support. But it is nice because when it gets dark, they do light up, so they do have some purpose. Okay, so here we are coming into the port of Melbourne. So yeah, the port of Melbourne's up ahead of us. They get something like 3,000 cargo vessels a year, and on average in a year there's something about 800 vehicles are delivered into this port per day, per year, on average. So there's a lot of new cars coming into Melbourne through that port. So we're going to swing around into Vic Harbour, and I want you to look for those 2 tall towers I pointed out earlier, and you can see that they're on a slant. So either the architect actually studied in Pisa, or he just had too many beers with his pizza. So I'm going to put the mic down, guys. If you want to get some nice pictures, now's your time as we face Victoria Harbour. We will be spinning the boat around shortly and playing some music. Thank you.